I often wonder if I'll ever meet a camel that is untrainable. I find myself daydreaming about situations and circumstances, wondering if in my career I'll ever come across this. And I kind of like the challenging idea. Logically, I think it's possible that some camels are, in quotes, untrainable. But in my heart and my experience, I know all camels can be handled and trained if given the time and the handler or owner with the right skills. Ultimately, training camels is a question about time. Hi, I'm Tara, head camel educator at camelconnection.com and host of this podcast all about camels. And if you're a camel owner, carer, or a want-to-be owner, then you are in the right place. We help people just like you become more camel confident and camel connected in camel training, handling, psychology, and well-being. This is your place to start or advance on your camel knowledge. We're here to help you become more camel connected. Let's dive into this episode all about untrainable camels. People often bring camels into their life without thinking about how much time these animals require, especially if they're solo camels, like they're not housed with other camels. Because camels in a herd environment is a slightly different story, as they are stimulated amongst themselves and their social needs are being met via the other camels. So the question is, are some camels untrainable? Well, I can say for certain that some people are untrainable. All jokes aside, the goal with camel training is to never try to get a camel to comply. It's all about building a bond and a friendship where the camel trusts you enough that they will do what you're asking of him or her, even when the communication wires get crossed. Another big factor to consider if a camel is, in quotes, untrainable, is if the camel handler or owner is actually a good match for that particular camel's personality. For example, there are just some camels' personalities which I cannot relate to, and I really don't like their personalities. And it's not that I don't like the camel, it's just a bad personality match. And as a professional camel educator, I have to put my differences and ego aside and work with camels regardless, that I don't gel with. And honestly, I kind of like the challenge anyhow. But, this is not the case for everyone. Not everyone has the time or skills or a personality match for a challenging camel, to deal with challenging camels. And you should never try and force a relationship between you and a camel. You either have a certain camel, like you either like a certain camel or you don't like them. And it's also vice versa. Some camels just don't like some particular people, and that's okay. Which leads me to the next point about training and handling camels. When a camel bites or cuds, aka spits, kicks at you, etc., it doesn't mean that the camel doesn't like you. What it means is that, one, they want you out of their space, and or two, they don't trust you just yet, or in some cases, they have learnt a bad habit. So think of camel training and handling like a human to human friendship. It can take some time to build trust between you and a new friend that you might be trying to build a friendship with. And at some point in you might realize the friendship doesn't work because the personalities are different or the values are different, and you may drift apart. And other friendships can last a lifetime. When people dub a camel as untrainable or too dangerous or too stubborn and the like, what's really being said is that the camel has not been decoded to human understanding. The only camel that I've seen as, in quotes, untrainable was while I was training staff in Thailand at a theme park there that had camels. This particular camel, he was a massive bull camel, intact male, that clearly did not have great experiences with humans in the past. He was really quick to bite with his massive head and teeth and had a demeanor about him that said something along the lines like, I will get you. So from the outside, he was super scary, and he just had that bull demeanor, like, I have one thing to live for, and that is mating, and if I don't get to do it, everyone else dies. And the reason that, you know, for lack of a better word, that he was a write-off was because we only had a certain amount of time in Thailand, and he was only ever used for breeding. So technically didn't need a lot of training because they had good infrastructure. But ultimately, if he was given the time, yeah, he could have been trained. I honestly do believe that, and I think about him all the time. And when I'm going back to Thailand. So what actually makes a camel untrainable in the eyes of humans? Excessive biting, kicking out, charging, cutting all over you, aka vomiting. These are just defense mechanisms built into the camel. So it actually doesn't mean that camel's untrainable because it constantly does these things. Not at all. It's probably more of a trust issue more than anything, or a bad habit. And the second point is sometimes the older the camel is, the more set in their ways they get, the more set in their ways that they can get, which can prove challenging in training. They're kind of like, well, I don't do life that way, so you're going to have to just like shut up now. That's sort of the lines of these older camels. When I say older, you know, we're looking at sort of maybe 10 years plus. Like they just get really set in their ways, or maybe they've been previously trained and like, nah, that's not how it's done. But all that can be overcome. And the third point I want to make about this is you know, what defines an untrainable camel in the eyes of humans is the physical or psychological limitations of a camel, like injuries or bad genetics. You know, really it's the later point that might actually stop a camel from being trained, because you can't undo genetics or injuries. Like if a camel has a dodgy leg, it's not going to be able to sit easily. So training a camel to hush might be off the books. That being said, I've seen blind camels being trained, which is just phenomenal. So like, you know, there's lots of grey area on that. But also there are some serious facts and situations where, that camel is not going to be able to be trained effectively. But there's always ways around those sort of things. So before a camel bites or cuds or kicks and all of that kind of stuff, there is always warning signs. And it's often in the camel's eyes, and it takes time, invested skill, and a sense of intuition to pick up on the warning signs before the camel actually levels up to a more physical demonstration. Hence the importance of you being mentored and skilled and educated in camels and building a camel connection. So really, most camels are actually trainable. Sure, there are the 1 or 2% of camels out there in the world that might be, in quotes, untrainable, but some of these camels might just need a bit more time and a great handler, a great and skilled handler and or owner, so that they can live up to their full potential. So after a solid camel connection has been formed and a trust has been built upon, only then do we actually ask the camels to do things. Often people will rush into things and go, I'm going to train the camel. Let's just train a camel. And that's all well and good, and it works for some camels, and they will respond to it. But other camels like, hang on a sec, we've gone to second base without even attempting the first base, which is the trust and bond building. You know, the second base, you know, in camel's term, is asking them to do stuff. You've got to build that bond, that connection, and that trust with them before asking them to do anything. It's just how the camel works. It's not something I'm making up in my head. It's just how it works. It's sort of like, it's just like a friendship, a normal friendship or a relationship. You know, it's the same thing. You've got to build up that trust and bond first. I've had the pleasure of witnessing many camels who their owners wondered if they'll even be able to train their camel, if they'll be able train them and handle them with connection and gentleness. And you know what the strangest thing is that the camel that gives you more challenging behaviors and situations, they actually end up being one of your best and most trusted and willing camels. Every time without fail, time and time again, owners will say, I'm not sure if they can be trained. Okay, we've managed to get to a certain level, and then that camel is just like bonded to this person like never before. It's often the ones that seem more trainable that are the more difficult ones, which is just ironic, and it just happens with camels. So if you really enjoyed this podcast about if camels are untrainable, and you want to learn more about how you can connect and bond and train with camels and train them gently according to their personality, you can head over to our website to get more training about the Camel Connection way by heading over to camelconnection.com/camel school, and consider joining our camel community. We have a wide and diverse community all over the world through our online course, and we have an amazing forum of people who are collaborating in there and sharing their stories and their challenges and asking questions. And really, you know, if you're thinking about getting camels, or you already have camels and you haven't had any official training course, you really do need it. Like, just for the betterment of your camel and your understanding, and also to really get rid of any ideas in the future, any ideas or challenges in the future that you can actually prevent before they actually do happen. So again, you can head over to camelconnection.com/camel school, have a read about the information we offer in our Camel Connection course in Virtual Camel School, and consider joining our community. We would love to have you again. So again, that's just camelconnection.com/camel school. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.